Okay. Hey there. We're going to see if this is working, right? This is like technical difficulties last time. So I'm going to give a few minutes, let people get connected. I really just wanted to open today up as an open discussion around neurodiversity, very interactive. So as questions come in, I will take those and we will have a conversation about it. Yeah, I'm just going to give a minute, let people connect. And find my way around this platform a little bit. I'm used to Zooming, so I'm gonna give a minute, let people arrive. And I made some notes. So I wanna make sure I am able to touch on the things I wanted to touch on. All right. As people are joining, here's what happens. I'm gonna be super honest. I'm a neurodivergent person myself. I was diagnosed inattentive ADHD about 12 years ago now, later in life. And I've been coaching people around this topic now for close to 7 years, and what I have found is that I have lots of thoughts, and so what often happens is I will be talking to my friend, my roommate, and I will get on what I call my soapbox, and before I know it, all these thoughts have tumbled out, and they feel super important, and then I end up realizing, "Oh, I'm actually sharing with a friend, and I apologize. I'm like, "I'm so sorry. I've been on my soapbox. Let me get off of it." And I was like, "I'm gonna create a platform on YouTube so I can share my soapbox stuff here," because it does feel important and I wanna increase awareness. And yes, I can do that within my community, and I do through coaching and teaching. But I think also people in the world, just need to hear more and more about neuro neurodiversity and what that means. So let's actually start there. Neurodiversity actually is a very inclusive term. We're talking about brain types, and the term neurodiversity includes all brain types. So, neurodivergent brain types, we're going to talk about what that means, as well as neurotypical brain types. So, the term neurodiverse includes all of them. So, every brain on the planet is a part of being a neurodiverse community, every brain on the planet. Now, when we're talking about a neurodivergent brain, I want to like lean towards what that means a little bit for those that are unaware. It refers to people who are less linear in their thinking, more circular thinking. It may encompass certain diagnoses or tendencies, ADHD, autism, Asperger's, panic disorders, depression can be included in there, right? So when we're talking neurodivergent brain types, less linear, less structured, sometimes interest-based attention. It can include highly sensitive. So it's just brains that are wired a little bit differently. What I tend to speak to primarily is ADHD and ADHD tendencies, and that ADHD really speaks to executive functions. So executive functions are a part of our brain that manage things like time awareness, they manage things like productivity, they manage executive function manages things like emotional regulation or dysregulation. So I'm really cognizant of language. So I used to speak to executive function challenges, and I would speak to how when you have ADHD, certain executive functions can feel more challenging. I do think that's true, but the language that I really want to bring to these soapbox discussions is a different perspective. So I want you to think about it this way. As humans on the planet, we have all kind of collectively agreed on this thing called time. And I'm just using this as one example. So we have agreed that in general, there are 365 days in a year. There are 24 hours in a day. There are 7 days in a week. There are 40 hours in a work week. Like they are decisions that we have made that collectively we agree on, many of us, right? Actually, I will say all of us, we agree on these things. But I want you to imagine for a moment, before you were born, let's say you dropped into the planet and there was no such thing as time. We didn't label a week, a day, an hour, a year. None of those labels existed, just humans on the planet. And let's say when you dropped in, let's just imagine people functioned based on like what their senses drew them towards, things that they were naturally interested in, things that they naturally gravitated towards. There was not this like linear plan. There wasn't, let me pull out a calendar and make sure it's scheduled like bup, 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 very linearly in a row. In fact, the natural way we're imagining was to really just watch the sun go up, move towards what felt right. I'm hungry. I think I'm going to go find food for my family. I'm tired. I think I'm going to sleep. The sun is up. I think it's time to like get moving and go out and, you know, look for food, whatever it was. And then over the course of time, we have decided on these constructs that are helpful but by default have labeled people that function a little more outside of those constructs as disordered. Okay. So, in that first world that I was painting, where we were imagining that there wasn't this linear time construct, what was normal was to be nonlinear. And so, if there were one or two humans who didn't function that way. Let's say they were the oddballs out. They were like, I need to know what's happening next. I need to know when we're doing this. I need to know like what the plan is. And the perspective was that, like, who is that person that needs to know all these things ahead of time? That's so weird. That's just not what us humans do, right? Then we could have just as easily labeled linear people in that scenario as disordered, as like needing to learn how to behave differently, right? That's not how it happened. So, like the result of how it happened, and much of it was due to the industrial industry and productivity and needing to like streamline like workforces. I'm not going to spend a ton of time there. It made sense. It was like more profitable, more efficient to have people running like cogs in a machine and all behaving and operating the same way. But because of all of this, we now have a situation where people who do not necessarily fit the natural mold of things are labeled as disordered or as having challenges. And I just like to think, what if that weren't true? Like, this is a space for imagining differently, creating different perspectives, right? So, like, what if nothing's gone wrong? We talked about this a little bit on the last call. What if there were just different types of humans functioning in different ways, and all types of humans were necessary? Like, what would that feel like? The reason things are a disorder is because we have labeled it as a disorder, and because people who experience those challenges don't necessarily fit neatly into the system. It's often described as like a round peg or a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, right? And so who's to say whether the problem lies with the square peg or with the round hole, right? Which one is wrong? They're like, I would offer neither. They both just are, they both just are existing. There's a square peg, there's a round hole. Now collectively, again, what we have decided is that holes should be round, right? That's the natural order of things. And pegs should also be round. And so if you're a square peg, that means something's wrong with you and you need to fix. You need to maybe shave off your square edges so that you can fit into this round hole. Because what happens is the people that have collectively decided that the hole should be round, like it helps. I want to say, I'm going to say them, but what I'm really speaking to is the system. It's not pointing fingers at people, it's more at systems. Um, It's like, yeah, come over to our side. Change yourself so that you fit like us over here. And people want to fit in. So I think then what happens is um, we have been brought up with messages, and I'm saying we as in neurodivergent humans, people who have ADHD tendencies, autism, Asperger's, whatever you want to call it, right? Anything that falls on that neurodivergent spectrum have received these messages over the course of a lifetime that something's wrong with them and they shouldn't have these square edges. There's not a place for them to fit in. They look at the whole and go, "Oh, there's a problem. I need to do something." And what I need to do is like shave off a little bit of myself so that I can fit and conform. Everybody wants to fit in, everybody wants to belong. So it is a very natural tendency. Hey, glad you're here. It is a very natural tendency to try to take the work on yourself and decide that you're the problem and that you're going to fix the problem yourself. And I do also, here's a caveat I want to say. Many of you know I teach the model. I do believe it's a great tool for like looking at your thoughts and your feelings and the actions that you're taking and the results that you're creating for yourself. I do think there's a place for that and it's really helpful. I also think I have one foot solidly in taking individual responsibility and one foot solidly in questioning the collective and the systems that are in place and systems of oppression. I'm like, "Oh, Soapbox has started because there's some connections here for me, and if you're not familiar, you haven't heard this before, I think it really started because racism, intersects with ableism, intersects with sexism. So, like, any group that is experiencing oppression, right, is experiencing some of what I'm describing, being a square peg and not fitting into this round hole. And I think for me, as a Black woman in the United States, I knew that people who were racist, it was something that they were grappling with, but that I was me. It wasn't about me. It was about their beliefs about me. And that was really clear. I think because of the communities I grew up in and I was raised in and the experiences that I had, I didn't question. I was like, oh, wait, I just am who I am. And if someone has a problem with that, it's about them, right? And so I think it was not a difficult jump for me to move from that to, oh, and also ADHD. Certain things feel challenging, but I also don't want to personally take that on as something's wrong with me. I think there's some education that needs to happen in the same way that with racism, I feel like there's some education that needs to happen. There's like some understanding. Um, so intersectionalism, I think that is also why I solidly have one foot in like, yes, how can we take individual responsibility, move ourselves forward? And how can we look at systems of oppression and speak to them and increase awareness and make changes, right? Okay, I'm gonna take a breath. That's why it's called neurodivergent soapbox because I tend to get on soapboxes. Dayon, it's good to see you. For those of you that are in my membership, you know this happens. And so I've created this space so that I can get on soapboxes and invite people to join me. So you said, for the love of God, do I ever feel that I need to fit in and it's torture to resist fitting in? Yes. Yes. And I see the teasing and I'm about to do it. It can feel like torture to try to fit in. And when do we want to and when don't we want to? Like, when do we want to fit in? Because sometimes it does actually serve us to subscribe to the constructs that are happening in our world. If it's like to the detriment of who we are and our self worth, our sense of self worth, our sense of value, I think maybe we don't want to try to fit in. We want to like shine bright in our own way. All right. Topics, questions as people have started to join. This is meant to be an open discussion. So I did want to invite and just, are there questions? What are your thoughts about neurodiversity? Let's start there. Said you don't know if this is the right place or time, but was wondering what all is included in the Brain Brilliance membership. I'm totally happy to speak to that. There is no right place, time, because you see how this is happening. I just like show up and go. I learn as I do things. So I'm happy to speak to that. What is included? I'm going to start with this. My belief is less is more. So there are not, well, I'll tell you what you won't find first, and then I'll tell you why and what you will find. So there are not a lot of modules to move through. In fact, there aren't any modules. There's not homework and workbooks. There's not a lot of things for you to do because I personally believe us neurodivergent folks don't have a problem when it comes to action, often, right? We are so interested in many different things often, and we are willing to do and do and do. Take action, stay busy, do the things to try to fix, shave the square edges, right? Do. So you're not gonna find a lot of things to do to try to fix things. What you will find is there are 2 calls a week. I call them coaching calls because we do coaching on them. I typically start at the top of the call with a 10-minute topic, and it is on whatever is feeling relevant to me in the moment. So they are not even pre-decided on the calendar. The calls are scheduled on the calendar, so you know ahead of time. I encourage you to show up on a call at least once a week. Even if you are not being coached directly, I think participating and, watching other people be coached can be helpful. I'm very cognizant of not everyone likes to be, coached or interact in the same way, so you can pop your information in the chat, and I will coach you that way. You can turn on audio only, I'll coach you that way, or you can turn your screen on. I love being able to see people. This feels a little weird to me, and it's a new platform, so I don't even know if I could like, how I can pull people up. I'll figure that out over time. Um, so really, I just encourage you to join 1 call a week. I think that's the best place to start, and it will change your life over time. Like, it's the one place that I'm like, I would just be consistent with either watching a call live, participating, or watching a replay. There is also an accountability call each week, or body doubling, we call it. It's on Mondays. You show up on that call. We put in the chat box the result that we wanna create over the next hour, and then we just get to work, and then we check back in at the end of that call, and we share what we've learned. Did it happen? Did it not happen? Why? What worked? What didn't? So that's fun. Body doubling or accountability calls have been shown to be really helpful for people who have ADHD or ADHD tendencies. The labels don't matter to me, honestly. It's just a way to talk about some of what people experience. So you have access to the recordings, the replays. You have access to the group coaching calls, and you have access to the topics. The chat box is always open on my calls because I think engagement is important. So you do get to know people over time, and I found it's a super supportive community. Um, People really say like, I can relate to that. That happens to me all the time, or people will ask questions. Does anyone have a resource for this? And it's a very sharing, caring group. People will pop those resources in the chat box as well. I hope that answers some of your questions. If you have more specific ones, just pop it in the chat and I'm happy to address that as well. Hey, Rhonda, it's good to see you. You've been feeling this way lately as you've been applying for jobs, that you're a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. Yes, absolutely. I mean, honestly, in some ways, I'll say I felt that way my whole life. I just didn't quite get it. I would lovingly say I was quirky. As an adult, I had friends I would run into in the grocery store, and they would be like, "Hey, what are you up to these days? Like, you're always doing something different." And when someone said it, finally, I was like, "Oh, I guess I am kind of always doing something different. Isn't that how all people function?" And then I've learned, no, actually, it really isn't. Um, I have been connecting with more HR companies. I recently did a presentation in a tech company, and it was on women, ADHD, and tech, and it went really well. So many eyes were opened. Actually, I was invited to be a speaker next year for them. And I think the more information that we can get out there around what is neurodivergent brain? Like, how do they function? What does it look like? How can workplaces better support? How can workplaces better recruit and like speak to some of those executive function tendencies? I think the more that information get out there, the easier it will be. But I do think most workplaces come from a very neurotypical perspective without any consideration for like, how might we best support these types of employees? And like, what are the contributions they bring, which are many and varied? Innovation, I'm like, I would say most innovation comes from a neurodivergent brain. So much innovation, whether someone realizes that they're neurodivergent or not. The ability to think outside of the box and create, I think it's why there's probably quite a few neurodivergent people in tech companies because innovation is so required there. Let's see. You said you found me from Brooke Castillo, but was curious what other training or experience I got that helped me to learn about neurodiversity. Yeah. So most of my experience around neurodiversity, most of it is personal. Like I was diagnosed inattentive ADHD at the age of 40. And so having a late in life diagnosis, when I was finally diagnosed, so much made sense. It's like these puzzle pieces fit together for me. And as a neurodivergent person, I'm sure many of you can relate to this. My brain loves information and collecting data and learning and knowledge. So it was a rabbit hole I dropped into. I am constantly learning for myself. And so I think that's how it started. I hired my first coach when I was diagnosed, and it really helped me just to normalize, have someone that understood me, got me, listened, and was not trying to coach me from a perspective of like normalcy or like what's tricky is when a coach is like coming from the space of being the round hole. So like they know about being neurotypical and their perspective is coming through in the coaching. I went on a few consults initially and it didn't work for me because I'm like, "Oh, they don't get me at all." And then I found someone who did, and then I ended up certifying through her program. So her name was Lori Dupar. I certified with her through the IACT Center, which is the International ADHD Coach Training Center. I was a coach through that program for a number of years before I actually found the life coach school and then became certified through Brooke because I love the model. I do think it's a fantastic tool. So I think combination of personal experience, I was a preschool director, that's where my career started, so I majored in child development. So I also think I tried to always have the lens for those kids that were, like, struggling in the classroom, and how can we change the environment to better support them, and I think all of that came from my personal experience. But I would say that contributes to a lot of my thoughts around neurodiversity as well. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? No, I love the questions. I love the interaction, honestly. I'm also super into human design. If you're in my membership, you know this. It's one of the random topics I go down sometimes, and I'll offer, like, human design sessions. So, um one of the things that I know about my human design type is that I am meant to respond. And so I learned over time what that meant for me is I can just schedule a topic and try to knock out a video talking about it. And it is very hard for me. I have no energy around it. It's not interesting enough for me. I really struggle with like bullet points and following cue cards and typing it all out. So I don't do that. The best stuff for me has always come out when I'm engaging with people, so I love the questions, never apologize for that. Oh, when is the next coach land? I love that. So we're currently in the pilot group, and it's going wonderfully, it's a lot of fun. I am making some adjustments that I think will make it even better. So the way it's gonna work is I'm gonna give this short snippet for people that are curious and wanna know. For the next round, you will work with me as a one-on-one client because what I've found through this round is that I really enjoy the one-on-one and having eyes on your business and getting really specific. And the way I do that this time is through coach office hours. What I want to do next time is work together, right? So it's 6 months one-on-one. And then if you are a one-on-one client, we're working together. When the next round of Coachland opens up, the target time right now is April. It'll go for 3 months. It's going to strictly be gamification. So this time I thought I would like mix in gamification and coaching and teaching, and I am doing that. Next round, it's like we're gonna take care of most of that in the one-on-one coaching, and then we're just gonna hit the games hard and fast, and I really do wanna make it more, like, prize-based. This time it's challenges, but challenges, and then you're creating results that you want. It'll be the same, but I also wanna have, like, literal prizes. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavor. Um, be sure to get on the wait list for Coachland, and then you'll get those updates and the information. You can go to my website, revealedpath.com, go to Coachland, and you will see the wait list on that page. I'm super excited for it. It is fun. And I think that came out of also I'm gonna share because coaches tend to find me because I think from the life coach school, um, what I learned and why I even created Coachland is because being a neurodivergent person in a space that feels more neurotypical can feel, again, like you're in a space where people don't quite get you. And it's fine. You can manage your mind around it and you can like move through those spaces as well. But I do think there is something different that happens when you're connecting with like-minded individuals and being kind of like challenged, guided, coached by someone who really gets it at a baseline level and understands what the nuances that might be different than if you were more linear, more neurotypical. Hey, Marianne, good to see you. I love that you like the name Brain Brilliance. I do too. This is a great segue because also random. This is how my neurodivergent brain works. Brain Brilliance has been around, like, the name, I wanna say for a little over a year and a half. The membership itself, it's going on 3 years now, but the song that's been coming up for me recently is, Rihanna. I keep hearing "Shine bright like a diamond." I'm not gonna sing, but that verse, and it so fits in with what I'm about in Brilliance, and what I realized is just like, diamonds, if you picture a diamond or a ring or a necklace, over time, they get kind of cloudy and they don't shine. They dim. So their like brilliance starts to dim. I think my goal as a coach, as a human, as a coach, is to be like jewelry cleaner, to like help clear off the residue that accumulates over time by being a neurodivergent human in a largely neurotypical societal system. I'm not gonna say like large like mainly neurotypical world. I don't think that's true. I think actually there's probably so many more people who are neurodivergent who have really tried to mask that and hide it because it didn't make sense. So I think as we start to talk about it more neurodivergent humans are gonna be uncovered. But I think just like to help people shine their natural brilliance. That is the goal. Whether you are a coach, a person, I was just talking about this with my Coachland group. I believe everybody is an influencer. We talk about influencers in social media. I believe every single human on the planet is an influencer, and you are meant to be in front of the people, connected to the people that you are meant to influence. So you are like a ripple in other people's world. And so I think for me, it's to help uncover that like residue so the brilliance can come through and you are able to ripple out and like serve the people that you're meant to serve. Whether you're a coach or not, I just think humans need to shine. Thank you for that segue, Marianne. Yeah, human design, natal chart, six senses. It's true. I love some human design. I love typing systems, not because I want to put people in a box, maybe because, I just like considering different perspectives and questioning everything. Uh, yeah, Dayon. So much coaching does come from the linear perspective. I do feel like there are coaches now who are like, "I'm busting out of this neurolinear." They don't talk about it so much language-wise. You do see many more people saying ADHD, "I'm ADHD." It's almost become a strange buzzword. I remember, like, 12 years ago when I started, it was a little harder to find people talking about ADHD, and then all of a sudden, all these business podcasters that I followed for a really long time, all of a sudden, they were like, "I have ADHD. I have ADHD." Anyways, fascinating, but many do come from a linear perspective. And on top of that, you feel like it's shoved down our throats to follow those systems for personal development. So tempting to follow along. It really is. So, like, as you know, Dayon, because you're in the group, a part of what the membership is about is really helping to deprogram, decondition, remove those beliefs about ourselves that we have. That is like step one. And it takes time. Marianne, we talked about this recently. You've been around now for a couple years in the membership, and you were like, I just feel different. Yeah, it's releasing all those labels and beliefs, the conditioning around who you are and what you're meant to do. Marianne, you said you're not a coach. What I provide helps with your business. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you're a coach, like it all applies, right? It's about like up leveling ourselves, really. Owning ourselves. I want to not just up leveling, but like stepping into and fully owning. Rhonda, you said you believe everyone is a genius and we have to find our genius. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Rhonda, I know, is a coach. So I love it doesn't matter. Human, who's not a coach, who has like if you're working for someone else, fantastic. If you are like a stay-at-home mom, full-time job, fantastic. If you are a coach, fantastic. It does not matter. Neurodivergent brains are everywhere. Literally everywhere. I love talking about niche drama because I'm like, if you're a coach, your niche is just how you're going to get your voice out there. But once you connect with people, it really becomes about harmony and resonance. And if people resonate with you, and like I say, our neurodivergent brains go with us wherever we're at. We coach on relationships, we coach on habits, we coach on goals, we coach on planning, we coach on all the things, right? It doesn't matter. It's about the human, the person that is stepping into all that. Oh, so fun. I'm like film girl philosopher. I love your name. Yes, totally join us. Also, I'm going to do a shameless plug. I have made the price so reasonable. There is a belief out there in the world. It's also conditioning that good quality, high quality things have to cost a lot of money. It's not true. And I'm about breaking down that conditioning. So I have run Brain Brilliance at so many different price points. It started at 49 a month. It's been at 97 a month for the past year and a half or so. I recently dropped it down because I feel called to like go wider. And so it's $33 a month. I encourage people just to do pay in full, which is $396 for the year. A year of support for $396. What it does for me, I am committed to breaking down some of the unconditioning around something of quality needs to cost more. I just don't believe it's true. An example I have is I had a pair of sunglasses once. They were Dior. I was in Vegas with a former boss who purchased them for me. They were like $500. I was like, okay, the most expensive sunglasses I think I've ever had. They broke the second time I wore them. I put them in, they had these funny little screws, and they got tangled in my curly hair, and the arm fell off. By the time my neurodivergent brain got around to reaching out to Dior and trying to get them fixed, they weren't making that design any longer, and the screw was, not structural, even though it was. They couldn't fix them. So I'm like, that's such a clear example of like, nope, $500 sunglasses broke after the second wear. Also, I will just say I had a pair of like Roxy, this was maybe 20 years ago, sunglasses from the dollar store. True story. They cost me $1. I had those sunglasses like 11 years before I lost them. So, all that to say, I do think it's a huge value. I'm confident in what I provide and my coaching. I love what I do. I know I'm meant to do it. And I absolutely think everybody who has a neurodivergent brain should be in Brain Brilliance. That was my soapbox. Also, I know how we have varied interests. If you are like me, we have many of the coaches I work with purchase a ton of programs. So they're like, I don't need another program. I've purchased this one and this one and this one and this one, myself included. And then they don't use them because there's something about the action of purchasing it that feels exciting. And then once we have it, it's like we kind of forget sometimes. It's just like a working memory challenge. I don't think it's really much more complicated, but I'm like, I'm going to price this so that it's like getting fries with a shake. So, like, everyone will take a side of fries. It's like the bonus extra. So, I don't care how many programs you have. I feel like it's priced so that if you pair it, get coached so that you actually use the programs that you're in. It's kind of meant to be an add-on, and just by itself, I know it does magic. So, okay, off that soapbox. Oh my gosh, this is also just so much fun. Marianne, ADHD, OCD, labeling, narcissist, etc. Yes, we talk about all of it. We've talked about relationship dynamics. We've talked about attraction points. that can happen when we have ADHD or neurodivergency, how that might attract someone who has more narcissistic tendencies and why. Literally, the topics are so varied, and it's because I go with interest-based attention. That is what ADHD is, so I allow myself to follow my natural interest, and you're welcome. It's sometimes a wild ride, and all different topics come up. It's fun for me. Dayon, lately you've started to notice so many people behaving with ADHD tendencies. You see it all around, but people are willing to force themselves to go along with the systems, and you're not. Yes, that's so interesting. I do think there has been an uptick in ADHD tendencies. So, like executive function challenges, maybe because we have become used to immediate results, right? So our attention span has like gone down to like the size of a gnat. I used to say this about myself. I have the attention span of a gnat, but literally our whole population is being conditioned to like need something quickly and fast and I need it now. So like think of all the social media, think of like YouTube Shorts, right? It's a little blip. People want it now and they want to move on to the next thing. They want the immediate result, the immediate dopamine. I don't think that means more people are becoming ADHD. I do think there are more ADHD tendencies that are showing up. I do want to differentiate. There is a diagnosis that is ADHD, and it is important to know that. I like to talk about it as being on a spectrum. So at one end of the spectrum, you like literally non-functioning, unable to get through your day, right? That's one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, you have these tendencies that show up. They don't necessarily cause you to like not be functioning in your day to day. I think support for all of it can help. Um, I do think there is a point where if you are non-functioning, I will actually like reach out, right? And say, "Hey, this might be worth exploring." I don't have thoughts about diagnoses. Medication can help so many people. I have many examples of how actually someone being diagnosed and choosing to take medication, it's always your choice. So even if you just explore it with a prescriber or a doctor, you have self agency. So they're going to tell you their thoughts and you get to decide what happens next. So I'm always like, don't be afraid to explore it. You always get to decide what you want to have happen next. But I used to work with children and teens as well. And so many parents were hesitant to get a diagnosis and medicate their children. And I understand it feels maybe harder. I have talked to many adults on the back end who are like, I self medicated because my parents refused to explore medication. And what that looked like was street drugs, which then escalated to addictions. Doesn't happen to everyone, but like what brains are wanting to do, especially in our youth or teens, they are wanting to regulate, right? So there's a natural tendency to try to want to hit a baseline that feels regulated. And so when neurotransmitters are off, and there are so many neurotransmitters involved with ADHD, it's not just dopamine. There's norepinephrine, there's serotonin, there's so many. When those transmitters are literally off, meaning not the levels are not balanced in a way that is most supportive for that individual's biology and chemistry. That's what I will say. There is a natural tendency to try to self-regulate that. And what that can look like is like extreme smoking of pot or extreme like drinking or that is a body's way of trying to self-regulate sometimes, not always, but that can come into play. So have done a lot of coaching around parents making a decision to like take their child to get a diagnosis and see if that's what's going on. I don't have thoughts. They're very neutral. I think there's no one way that is right. It really comes down to the individual. Okay, coming up for air. If you've joined later, feel free to pop in questions or comments or anything you're curious about. I am going to learn how to pull people up. I feel like right now it's not yet a capability, but I really do like to engage in the membership. I pull people up and you actually see faces, and it's like a little weird for me just to do it from the chat. Marianne, you said every human is welcome. Our pets tend to speak up occasionally. Yeah, I love that. Yes, Marianne is an OG as well as Dayon. They've been around for a while in the membership, and it's true. Everybody is welcome. I love that about the group. There is no like one way of being or looking that is right. And there's like no perfections. Pets do tend to speak up occasionally, and we are very like, we just roll with it. Let's see. You said you were just learning about marketing yesterday, and they teach in college that people equate price with value, but that is not necessarily accurate in practice. Yes, it's true. It is true. I want to say there is conditioning that has happened that says like the higher price something is, the better it is. And I'm not going to lie, there is evidence that sometimes that is the case, but it's just not always. And so, um, I don't know why, but I solidly find myself kind of straddling two sides, like in the middle of things, debates. And so I'm like, I value both. I value that some things are high priced and cost a lot of money, and I'm absolutely willing to invest in things, right? My certification was $18,000 investment. It was a huge number, terrified me, and I did it, and it was, like, one of the best things I did. So, mm, I am not, put off by investing in high ticket things. And some of the best investments I've made, especially over the past few years, as I've been a little bit more on, like, a healing journey. I have found some practitioners, some energy workers who like what they do is golden. I bring some of that in as well to the membership and just share. And the price, my thought is like they are not charging enough for this because it is like one of the best things I've ever experienced. And they like their reasons why, right? So that's how I feel about my membership. Um, I just like my reason why. I wanna make it, like, such a no-brainer for people to be like, "Well, I don't know if I'm doing all these other programs, but I am doing this for sure." So, that's my shameless plug. And I'm kind of about breaking down stereotypes and systems. I mean, a lot about it. And so my rebel comes out around systems and norms and what is taught. Hey, Sarah, I'm glad you popped in. Yes, actually, there will be a replay. It's public and it's on YouTube, so it will be on my channel and you'll be able to access it. And it's under the little area that is called the Neurodivergent Soapbox. 2 weeks from now, actually, I'm going to have a panelist again. So the rhythm of this is every other week. I'm going to do a live call on YouTube. One of them will be just myself, like today, and then the other one will be with a panel of people and more of a discussion. And so, also, if you're in the membership, I invite you to participate in that. 2 weeks from now, it'll be on ADHD tax. Dayon, I know we've talked about this. I might be coming into your inbox. Let's see. So yes, there is a replay because it's just recorded and it will be available and you can come back and watch it anytime under the Neurodivergent Soapbox playlist. Dayon, you said a lot of coffee regulation. Totally. Coffee, right? Caffeine can be a thing. And if it works for you, for a lot of neurodivergent people, caffeine actually like settles them. So it has an opposite effect. Like a neurotypical person maybe would drink a lot of coffee and it ramps them up. For a neurodivergent person, caffeine often kind of like grounds you. I don't drink coffee. I don't like the taste, but I like chai tea. And I find that's true for me. I can have caffeine late in the afternoon. It really doesn't impact my sleep. Not everybody can do that. You have to test it for yourself. Let's see. Do I feel the price for my certification was completely worth the value, or would you have paid more? Oh, that's an interesting question. I feel like at the time, for me, and it's such a personal decision, I feel like at the time, it was completely worth the value, what I paid. I have made it back tenfold. It was well worth it. It also just making the decision and committing to do it also was so huge because it took a level of belief in myself that I had not accessed before. So it was worth it for so many different reasons. It's hard to say if I would have paid more because that's just so subjective. I think back then it felt like such a stretch. I don't know that I would have. I think now if you ask me if I were in right alignment with the program, would I be willing to pay more than that? Probably, because to me, it is just a circumstance and it just comes down to prioritizing finances. So if it felt like a priority and I liked my reason, I would probably. I don't really have thoughts about, um, there's not a hard line where I'm like, oh, this is way too much or this is way too little. I have paid less for programs and been way less satisfied, and I've paid less for programs and been just as satisfied. It's, like, so subjective. That was such a non-answer to your question. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think at the time I probably wouldn't have paid more because it felt like my stretch point, my growth edge, like, I hit it for sure with that number, and it was really worth it. It kinda blew my mind with what now I believe is possible. Again, I think it was a really good investment, one of the best choices I've made for myself. Dayan, you said, "Can I please speak to the feeling that I have, which is that I need to solve for my ADHD tendencies? It's almost like I'm waiting to solve this in order to do other things." Is that a thing? Yeah, totally, that's a thing. I mean, I think that's that conditioning, right? Like, just believing that there is something that needs to be solved, I think speaks a little bit to conditioning. Now, it's not to say that we don't want to grow, expand. We all are doing that all of the time. And so I do think growth, yes. Are we moving towards growth? Yes. But if it's coming from a place of like something's wrong with me, must be broken, I need to be fixed, those are conditioned messages. Those messages are meant to shave off the square edges of your square peg so that you fit into the round hole. Growth sounds like I'm going to keep my square edges and I'm going to expand into spaces that are maybe not as comfortable, or I'm going to keep my square edges and connect to the things that are more aligned with me. I think it has less to do with trying to prove your worthiness or trying to fit into spaces that maybe are less understanding, accommodating, accepting. I think anytime we're really trying to do that, we're trying to maybe prove something to ourselves still. And it's okay. But I think it comes from a place of like a lifetime of conditioned messages. And it takes just time to like undo some of that. It doesn't require time, like, it's not necessary. Sometimes it can happen, like, in a moment with a new thought or a new aha, but it can take time. Um, yeah. So, I am like that's part of my, like, mission, right? You do not need to wait to solve in order to shine bright like a diamond. I'm gonna keep singing Rihanna. It's funny, I'm not a huge Rihanna fan, and the song now is like, "Everyone needs to shine bright." Don't wait, because what happens while you're waiting to get it in the right order is time is moving because time does move, and, like, people that you could influence, people that you could be the ripple for them, people that you could impact are, like, not receiving that from you, and you came on the planet with it already packaged in you. Like, I think there's a gift in everyone that we were dropped here with. And, like, part of this game is to, like, get back to it, rediscover it, and realize, "Oh, it was with me all along. I just need to clear off all this messaging and let that thing shine." One of the, energy people that I worked with this year, it was fun. I don't people don't know much of my background, but I'm gonna just very briefly say I was raised Christian, I identify as Christian, and I'm open to, like, I don't understand everything that happens in the universe, so I'm curious about most things. So one of the energy workers that I, worked with, she had read my natal chart, and she said there's a very specific star point in my chart that is I forget the name of it, and I'm not that into it, and she said basically it's like an activation, it's something I don't even know about, but I can just be, like, walking in a grocery store and pass someone, and, like, energetically, if I'm within 6 feet of them, it can, like, activate something within them. So here's why I'm telling you this because it's funny. I don't know if it's true or not, but there's no science, right, that actually can prove this. But believing it, just having the thought, it brought me back to, like, another piece of myself where I'm like, "Oh, maybe that's possible," and I walk through the grocery store with my head a little higher, my shoulders back. That's a model example. It just is like what we choose to think can really impact how we feel, how we carry ourselves, and then who we influence and impact. It's not about, like, changing all your beliefs or prescribing to some like crazy woo system or it's just about like what do you choose to think about yourself? What do you choose to be? Who do you choose to be in the world? And I think if you're waiting to solve for something that doesn't need solving, people might be missing out on your goodness. That's all. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Let's see, Rhonda, you did not know that about coffee. You love coffee and it has not effect on you. It has no effect on you. Yeah. I mean, it is fascinating. I think it's also like ADHD meds. Some people will say, like, I'm trying to think of how this question comes up, but like for some people, I think it was when I was working with teens, parents would sometimes say, like, is there a danger that like a child could have more of a proclivity to addiction and like by taking meds they might become more addicted because or more prone to addiction because um, of the type of medication that's prescribed for ADHD. And there's a whole science behind it that I'm not going to go into here. And again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to preface that. But the way medication would impact someone who has ADHD diagnosed and their brain chemicals, their neurotransmitters respond to that medication in a certain way. Someone that doesn't have it, doesn't need it, they might like experience something immediately, but over time it wouldn't serve them. So like what am I trying to say there? It's kind of like with the caffeine thing, right? Like chemicals react differently in everybody's body based on their biology. And so there's really less of a chance of addiction per se for someone who has ADHD because it's kind of shoring up and supporting the neurotransmitters that are there. Sometimes it's a case of not enough of a neurotransmitter. Sometimes it's a case of too much. Sometimes it's a case of the delivery system that gets it from one thing and brings it to the next. That part is not always super efficient. Uh, anyways, so yes, chemicals in our body affect every human differently. Does anyone with ADHD find that they're actually slower at many tasks? I find myself struggling because I do many tasks slowly, usually doing a very thorough job that is not really wanted by others. Yes. I think a few things there. One of them is conditioning. So, like, if we have evidence that we tend to like move quickly and miss details, and we have in the past gotten in trouble for that before, right? For like not being detail oriented, what can happen is then we flip to the other side. All or nothing thinking is very common, and the other side of that is like hyper focus. And so then we can be like hyper vigilant around doing a good job, and that means like knowing logically we need to slow ourselves down so as not to miss anything. So that can be part of what's going on when we're slowing down around tasks. Sometimes it can be a little bit around indecision. Thought work can help with that, like believing that we don't know what to do next, doubting ourselves, not trusting ourselves. That can cause us to move more slowly just because we need to build the skill of making more solid, powerful decisions. So it's not a like one size fits all when it comes to like moving slowly through things. Sometimes it's because it's really interesting and we are falling in rabbit holes. And so we start on one thing and then our brain is like, oh, in order to do this better, I need to dive in a little further. And then those like segues that we dive into take a little bit more time. So it can be a number of things. And what really helps is you can bring that specifically to coaching calls and give a specific example. And it might be different every time, but we can really kind of get to the bottom together of what was happening with that specific incident. Okay. Marianne, remembering you went so far as to get a brain MRI, verified you were okay. Your brain was okay. You had two concussions. You were blaming them. Yeah, I mean, that is taking it to the level where you're like, I want proof that my brain is okay. Nothing's going on. Yeah. Rhonda, I love that you are sharing with film girl, philosopher. I can focus on a task when I'm excited about something. Once you start, you can finish because you don't like incomplete projects. It drives you crazy. Yes. Totally, and I kind of feel like we kind of worry ahead of time that we're gonna start and not finish because that can be common, but I actually believe a lot of the things we don't finish, we maybe weren't meant to be connected to in the first place. Just our, impulsivity, excitement connected us to the thing, and then, like, somewhere along the way, it was like, "Ah, I don't actually even know that this is something that in the big picture I wanted to be connected to." Um, so 2 things, like, on the front end, we can build the muscle, build up the skill of like being intentional, being a little more intentional about what we want to do and deciding, building up this decision making skill. And we can also just learn to like not make it mean anything if we decide to put something down and not finish it. We can practice with mindset about like, yeah, I mean, I did it. I rode that wave until it was over. And then I was like, I'm not interested. I'm going to set it down and move on to something else. I'm like, what's coming through solidly here for me, there is no one right answer. And I think that's a fundamental belief. I'm also going to say I love to share my thoughts. And in the group, I really bring you back to yours because I do believe um, that every person knows inherently what's best for them. So it's kind of like my job. That doesn't feel quite like the right word. Mission feels a little more appropriate to like help ask the questions and bring out your inner guidance. I love talking and I love like sharing my thoughts for sure, but please know they are my thoughts, my experience for me. If something resonates, great. I feel like it's a piece that you're meant to hear and then you take it and then you make it yours and then someone else is going to resonate when you talk about it. And that's how like it's catch a fire energy, right? That's how it spreads. But by no means like believe that what I believe or my way is intended to be like a one size fits all for everybody, like all the neurodivergent humans on the planet. Not a thing. Every single neurodivergent person is as different as the neurodivergent person next to them. Every single one of them. So we are all wired and like uniquely made. Let's see. We're going to wrap up. We have just a couple minutes left. I'm so excited that you all came. It's been super fun. Um, I want to do one last shameless plug. If you are not in Brain Brilliance, I encourage you to join. Get in now. December, we're talking about money and ADHD because I do think there are very specific connections. It's $396 for the whole year. It is a ridiculous price. Calls are recorded. If you can't make them live, you can watch replays. I really care about all the people that I work with. I hope that comes through. And just thank you for joining in today. It's a lot of fun. 2 weeks from now, we'll go live again. There will be a panel and we'll be talking about ADHD tax and what that is and what that means. It's a thing, but it's basically why why we sometimes, no, not sometimes, why we end up paying more because systems are set up in a way that does not support executive function, people with executive function challenges. That is the short of what an ADHD tax is, and we're gonna dive into that 2 weeks from now. All right, that's it. I love it. Um, I am all about I love that you just signed up for certification. Come into Brain Brilliance. Yes, there you go. Because I'm like, I'm happy to coach you on it. And I have supported many coaches through their certification. So I would love to do that as well. All right, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for joining me. Oh, also, I was going to open up if anyone wants to join our coaching call. It's the last day of the month. It's happening right now. So you can pop over to that. I should pop. I'm going to run late for a minute. I know you've been here an hour, so it may not be something that you'd like to do today, but I'm going to pop the link there just in case. You are welcome to join in. I have a feeling attendance might be lower because it's not our usual day. So I'm just copying the link really fast. I'm going to pop it in the chat. And then if you would like to join us over there, feel free. All right. There we go. All right. See you next time. Bye.